Hello. Good morning to you. It should be right around 10 o'clock. I see some of you are starting to arrive. That's wonderful. Happy Saturday to you. In some parts of the world, it's a 3-day weekend. Memorial Day in the United States and other places that pay memory and honor to people who have passed away, soldiers. And so, welcome to you. I'm so glad you're here. I've waited all week for you to arrive and for this day to arrive so we can have another visit. How was your week? Anything special? Anything different? Anything new? How was school? Did you go to school? Absolutely. Let's see here. Hello, Wendy. Wendy's a Santa believer all the way from the United Kingdom. Hello, Wendy, to you. It's good to see you. As I said, the first few weeks of us doing this, we were going to review for a few seconds so people who are new to Santa's broadcast can kind of catch up. And so in the first few weeks, we learned a lot, didn't we? We learned a lot of show and tell. Maybe you do that at school. Or maybe you have to do that in your job, show and tell. We learned about Rudolph. We learned about Santa's big walking stick. Do you remember the name for that? Yes, it's a scepter. Big, tall scepter. And if you remember, we have Rudolph carved on all sides of the scepter. So that if Rudolph gets lost, when we're navigating around the world on Christmas, we can't very well stay lost, can we? And so Santa's able to shake his scepter with Rudolph and his red nose on my scepter. And that gets us back on track, navigating so we can come and visit you. Absolutely. It's a wonderful walking stick. It's tall as Santa. It's over 6 feet tall. Absolutely. We learned about where the reindeer live. A barn, a corral. But you all wanted to know, are they truly at the tops of the pine trees, Santa? Yes, they are. That's where they like to play and frolic. And you remember that's why Santa has lights and sky windows in the tops of his workshop and in the tops of his house, so he can call to the reindeer and tell them to come down for dinner or to stop playing so much. We answered a lot of your questions. We've been answering your questions, haven't we? Last week, do you remember what the question was? How do you get into my house if I don't have a chimney? And so if you remember, we learned about the magic keys, didn't we? Remember how we had to touch the keys for 5 seconds? And that magically would allow Santa to come into your home, even if you didn't have a chimney. So you don't have to worry about that. That was wonderful. We began reading a wonderful story. Do you remember this? The Christmas Wish. Do you remember the little girl's name? From Norway. Anja. Anja. We're going to be finishing that story today. Yes, we are. And so some of you wanted to know about Santa a little bit more, and I thought that's what we were doing, answering your questions, but I looked out some photos. And so I thought I'd share some photos that you might be interested in. Would you like that? Here we go. We'll look at some photos, and then we'll finish reading the story, The Christmas Wish, Now remember, you were supposed to be predicting what Anja would do. What would happen? How would the story end? If you remember, Anja decided that she wanted to go visit Santa and be one of his elves. And so she started out on a journey. And she ran into a reindeer and a bear and a muskox and a little red bird. And they all guided her to a certain spot in the frozen tundra. And that's where we left off. And so you were going to predict how you thought the story would end. Did you come up with an idea or two about what would happen? Would she meet Santa? Would she get too fearful and turn around and go back? We'll find out in a few moments. Are you ready for some photos to visit with Santa? Here are some photos. No one's ever seen these before, just like you folks are the first ones to ever come into Santa's studio. Here are some photos that no one's ever seen before. Are you ready? That is Santa's house. Now you'll notice there's a big snowstorm, isn't there? But that's the front door, and that's the top of his house. That's where there are windows on the top of his house. I love my house. It's so pretty, outside and inside. Some of you asked Santa, is there a North Pole? Just like you asked Santa about whether or not I'm real. And remember we tugged Santa's beard? Yeah, we tugged. Oh, it hurts still when we do that, don't it? Would you like to see if there's a North Pole? Here it is. Can you see that right there? And that's Santa's house. And that's the actual frozen North Pole right next to Santa's house. So yes, there's an actual North Pole. And you know the pole? It's frozen solid. All year round, that pole is frozen solid. In fact, the elves like to play a little game. Especially if we have any new elves. They like to see if they can stick their tongue onto the pole and not have it stick. Do you think a tongue sticks to the frozen North Pole? So there's the actual North Pole. Now, you'll notice these little red mushrooms. They're actually kind of large, and that's where some of the smaller elves live at night before they come out to play and do jobs in the workshop. So there's the actual North Pole. Isn't that exciting? Would you like to go inside Santa's house and see where he sits to greet children? Here you go. Look at that. Who is that? Is that Santa? You'll notice he's sitting on a very large throne made out of wood, carved right here by elves at the North Pole. Do you see Santa? That's how I greet everybody that comes into Santa's house to visit him. I reach out my arms and I say, welcome to you. I've waited for you to arrive. There's where Santa greets. Absolutely. I think you can see some candy canes down here. Is that candy canes? Well, I'll tell you right now. Look at this one here. And there's a Christmas tree. And do you see Santa's scepter? And do you see the bucket of candy canes? Absolutely. When you visit with Santa, you're supposed to be getting a candy cane, do you? But what about your family, Santa? A lot of you said, Santa, we know about Mrs. Claus, but Are there other people in your family? And I'll tell you, here is my number one helper at the North Pole. She's my number one chief elf. Look at that. Do you see her? That, and you can see her wonderful stockings and boots, and look at her beautiful elf outfit. That is Tinsel. I let the elves choose their own names, and this is Tinsel. She is such a big helper to Santa. She keeps all of the visitors straight and makes everyone feel so very welcome. Santa couldn't do a very good job without Tinsel there. And my number two elf, would you like to see her? Look at her. Isn't she wonderful? She helps visitors inside Santa's house, and she greets them with tinsel. And we take a picture if they want to. Her name? Bubbly. That's Bubbly. She's a wonderful, wonderful elf for Santa. Yes, she is. Bubbly and Tinsel. Here's Bubbly in front of Santa's house. Do you see? I have big giant candy canes at the entrance. That's my door. Bubbly and Tinsel. And did you know, very few people know this, but look, that's Tinsel. And who's that in the middle? That's Santa's dog, Arrow. Arrow's a wonderful, wonderful and loyal companion to Santa. Sometimes I go stroll through the woods and Arrow comes along to make sure Santa doesn't get lost. That's Arrow. Wonderful, wonderful Arrow. Big, beautiful blue eyes too. Just a few more and then we will read the Christmas wish. Look at this. Do you see some of my favorite friends at the North Pole? There's Tinsel, and there's Arrow, and there's Queen Ice. There, I think you can see Santa right there. Do you see Santa? And we're standing in front of a big, giant tree. If you remember, I mentioned that every night during Christmas time, we have a big parade at the North Pole. All the wonderful characters and people who live at the North Pole join in. Visitors join in as well. And we come down this wonderful pathway. Santa comes last after all of his other elves begin the parade. And Santa comes at the very end, and we gather around the Christmas tree. Just like that. And we play music and we sing and we dance. And here is another picture of the Christmas tree. Do you see how snowy it is? It's a beautiful tree. It's a live tree. We didn't chop down a tree. No, the tree lives and it's a wonderful, wonderful tree. And always remember, when you visit Santa, get your candy cane. Do you see? They're in the shape of a heart. Santa loves you. Yes, he does. Sometimes Santa gives out candy canes that aren't peppermint like this, but he gives out candy canes that are rainbow color, and they have a fruit flavor to them. Yes, they do. I hope you enjoyed the visit to Santa's house, seeing where he visits and greets little children and grown-ups too who believe in Santa. Thousands and thousands every year come to visit Santa. Sometimes Santa goes to visit them. Absolutely. So there are some photos. You all asked about Santa's family and some things about Santa and his house. And so that's why I showed you those photos. Are we ready? Do you remember? The Christmas wish. See if you can remember. Anja, good little girl, huh? She decided she wanted to be one of Santa's elves and helpers. So she helped the older lady next door, and then she packed up and she set off on a journey. Yes, she did. Do you remember? She met a red bird that helped her along her journey. And then she met a big bear and a muskox, and she went over the mountains, and the reindeer helped her fly through the sky, over the oceans, and she saw whales down below in the seas. And she had quite an adventure, and then she was very tired, and she fell asleep with the reindeer because the reindeer was tired. Do you remember she offered the apple? Yes, to the reindeer, and then they had a nice snooze. And then pretty soon they woke up. Are you ready? Here we go. Anja's wish was to meet Santa Claus. What was your prediction? Did she meet Santa? Was he an old mean grump? Was he a nice old man, very friendly? Did she get too scared and turn around and go back? Did she go back, but she got lost because all of the creatures were no longer there to guide her? Well, let's find out what happens. Are you ready? Santa Claus appeared. Look at that. Santa Claus appeared. Can you see? He lifted Anja up onto his knee and he said, "Welcome, Anja. I have been waiting for you." Doesn't Santa say that to you as well? Every Saturday morning, Santa welcomes you and says, "I've been waiting for you to arrive. You are an extraordinary little girl," Santa told Anja. "While there are many, many children who wish to be one of Santa's elves, you are the very first one to have come this far. That's amazing. And you already are my most important helper besides your mother and all of the mothers of the world." What makes you magical to Santa, Anja, is that you are kind and you bring joy and happiness to everyone that you meet. You are helpful, and that makes you special. And Santa believes that of each of you too. I thank you for that. We need more little girls and boys like you to be helpers and to bring happiness and joy. Now, Anja, can Santa ask you a favor? Anja leaned close to Santa and he said, "Will you help drive my sleigh?" Anja just got so excited. She loved the moment when she could say, "Fly, fly, fly" through the air with the reindeer. Do you see? Do you see Anja? And there's Santa. And there are the reindeer, yes. And they went for a wonderful, wonderful flight around the North Pole, over the North Woods, and down below. She saw all of the creatures that helped her get to visit Santa. She felt so very, very happy. After a long flight, they landed. Can you guess where they landed? It was a very early Christmas morning near Anja's home. Before I leave, Santa said, I'd like to give you a very special gift. Is that all right, Anja? Oh, yes, she said, Santa. You have made my wishes come true. Well, Anja, I have a special bell just for you. Can you hear that okay? Yes. Oh, it's a beautiful bell. It's different than these bells with the magic key. Santa gave her the magical bell. If you ever need help, ring this bell 3 times. 3 times, she said. I promise, Santa, I promise. Santa kissed her on the cheek. Anja kissed Santa on the cheek. And the next thing you know, she was waking up in her bed. She sat up. She looked outside. Lots of snow still outside. It was cold and frosty. But there was no Santa. There was no sleigh, no reindeer, no tracks even in the snow, which made her wonder, was this a dream? Or did I really get to visit Santa? And then she looked on her bed covers and she saw the bell, and she realized her dream had come true. Isn't that a wonderful story? Keep being the very best child that you can be. If you're an adult watching Santa, keep being the very best adult you can be as well. Continue to give selflessly to others. Help other people. Take turns. Share. Be kind and helpful. Next week, would you like to hear another story? Santa has wonderful, wonderful stories. In fact, you might be able to see some of them right back here on one of my shelves. Do you see those books there? We'll choose one of those books and start reading it next week. Is that all right with you? Yes, it'll be another wonderful story. But don't forget, Anja, the Christmas wish, with all of the wonderful creatures that she visited. Well, I'd like you to keep sending notes and letters to Santa. I read every single one, and that's where I get my ideas for what questions you want to have answered. Absolutely, all of those questions come from you. So right there on my Facebook page, I believe in Santa, ho, ho, ho. Oh, it feels good to say, ho, 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 ho. Send Santa your notes and your comments. I think you can do it right there on the Facebook page. So farewell for now. I hope you've enjoyed our share time and the questions that Santa answered. And you, for the very first time, were the ones who have visited and seen not only inside Santa's studio, but you got to visit inside Santa's house. And you saw his wonderful big chair. Who did you meet? You met Tinsel, my #1 chief elf. You met Bubbly. Wonderful, wonderful. You know who Bubbly reminds me of? Anja. Bubbly and Anja could be the very same person. You saw the big giant Christmas tree. You saw some of the other family and friends that Santa gathers with around the Christmas tree as we listen to Christmas music during the Christmas season. Now, I'm going to give you a little hint. I've gotten a couple questions already about what does Santa wear on his feet. Now, if you have any Santa stories or Christmas stories, you might look at those and see whether or not Santa is wearing sandals. I don't think so. Can you wear sandals in the snow? No. Does he wear tennis shoes? Does he wear heels? Or does he wear big, big black boots? I might have one of the elves get Santa's boots from his shelf, because I really only wear those magical boots, and they are magic, during Christmas time. Absolutely. And so, for now, I want to thank you for visiting with Santa on this special Saturday morning. May the rest of your day and the rest of your week be filled with joy and happiness and peace as you try to bring happiness and peace to everyone else. Remember, just as you love people, Santa loves you too. Bye-bye for now.